What is going on, guys? Hope everyone's having a great day, staying safe out there during the COVID-19 crisis. Today we're talking about a federation without a Prime Directive. Now, we talk about the Prime Directive all the time, whether it's ethical, whether it's effective, even applicable in some cases. We know that the most major powers, think that the Federation uses the Prime Directive in either a self-serving or deceitful manner, and of their approach to, of course, other civilizations. So how does this affect Star Trek Fleet Command, if at all? Okay, so let's explore this. So this exercise, this example was first started by Wald Marshalling on Reddit, but I'm just going to kind of deep dive into this. And, I'd really kind of like to speculate on how the Alpha Quadrant, would be changed by the Federation that didn't interfere, as usual. How would this really affect the Federation's kind of own politics in a way? How would it affect its cultural perceptions? So we're going to deep dive into 3 essential Prime Directive scenarios. And, people have been talking about this all over the internet, and, whether this is being observed in Star Trek Fleet Command. Okay, so number 1, whether to ally or adopt with kind of pre-warp societies, such as the Federation, considering, when to approach these, such as pre-warp Baku in shows like Discovery. Number 2, whether to protect other civilizations from extinction. So this is another one which is kind of really arbitrary in a sense. So in Discovery, Georgiou intervenes to save a desert tribe. So this is in the Vulcan Hello, as Nikolai tries to do in Homewood, kind of the same deal, and even Data in the Next Generation in Pen Pals. I mean, the examples go on. I mean, there's so many examples of this kind of Prime Directive here. And of course, number 3, whether or not to answer calls to aid or asylum, such as, in episodes we've seen, just such as The Brightest Star, for example. There are a lot of exceptions, so many that it's often up to the judgment of the captain or even the senior officer on site, as we've seen in The Next Generation with Picard, with Discovery. And especially in Discovery, Saru's call for help was answered, but in other episodes, in other Star Trek episodes, it was not. This creates a sense in both the universe and of out that the Prime Directive is mostly there to be invoked when someone needs help, help to hide behind a decision that they know will be unpopular. We've seen this time and time again in Star Trek Fleet Command, in the various missions where we've seen ourselves interact with kind of civilizations and Maya kind of interacting. And even though we're not Federation, we're actually independent, it does draw a lot of examples which spring to the front of my mind and many others too. This happens all the time. So, let's look at some of these scenarios. Okay, so the first scenario, what happens to the Alpha Quadrant when the Federation really has no qualms per se about adopting protectorate worlds? This is one which is like kind of the easiest to kind of interpret here. We've seen so many wacky admirals, like Kirk, like so many others, which try to engineer, perfect kind of little worlds to know that kind of influence and create power and imbalance, which can, easily be corrupted. If the Federation was in a colonial scramble, like take this lightly for now. If the Federation was in a colonial scramble, along with the Romulan Empire and the Klingon Empire, I'd expect we kind of see kind of more mercy type scenarios. I'm not too sure, like the community and others, I'm not too sure like how the balance of power would really change in this type of scenario. And it's really the greatest potential for abuse. I mean, a federation without a policy to stop someone from seizing a planet and even brutalizing the inhabitants, definitely weaker politically. But even in Star Trek Fleet Command, in the various missions, we've seen the Federation kind of go after the arguments, which has been kind of interesting to see, because, are they breaking the Prime Directive here? Like, it's kind of interesting to see. And if you have done any of the Star Trek Fleet Command missions, like, you'll know some of the dialogue is definitely kind of borderline gray area in the Prime Directive. Okay, so number 2, this is one of the hardest of the Prime Directive to justify this scenario. So seeking out new life and new civilizations, as Starfleet always puts it, is pretty hard when you make a point of allowing, entire civilizations to just die because they don't pass your technological test. So, what happens if operations like Jojo's in Discovery become standard? I mean, does the Federation become responsible for kind of providing a planet-wide evacuation when necessary? Like, some of these examples are very hard to detail for sure. And how does the Federation choose to kind of intervene? Are there cases where the Federation would brush up against another power to provide mass extinction? I can't think of any specific examples, but guys, leave a comment below if you think there are any. I mean, does the Federation intervene to prevent any sapient disasters? I don't know. And so scenario number 3, this one really makes sense because it's more from a point of view than, is it more trouble than to let someone die kind of scenario? There's of course a difference between imposing our standards on someone who refuses to ask for asylum, but, would you deny it to members of an advanced civilization who kind of know about the Federation and need their help? I mean, it's kind of hard to justify here on this kind of grounds. I think we see this in a case where, are we looking at more of a diverse Federation? Would this change affect power and politics? I mean, would the Romulans and even the Cardassians would they do their best to keep people from reaching Federation space? I mean, this is some interesting questions here, and something which I think the developers could really explore in Star Trek Fleet Command. What do you all think? I want to know, like, do you think the Alpha Quadrant would be a little bit different without the Prime Directive? Like, we've seen in Star Trek Fleet Command an independent space, like right here. So right between here is kind of independent space, and it kind of operates without a Prime Directive. So, I mean, there's not a lot of Prime Directive stories in Fleet Command which kind of illustrate these diversive points. And, we could even see the developers in Star Trek Fleet Command generally steer the Federation to an idea without a Prime Directive. Like, this is entirely possible in the upcoming season of Picard, in future storylines of Star Trek Fleet Command. I mean, I would argue that in the storyline, especially in the independent storyline in Star Trek Fleet Command, that this is already happening. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. Thanks, guys, and stay safe. All right, see ya.